大爱二台地球证词佛教系列。
各位观众朋友，大家好。5月，在这个佛陀诞生的特殊月份里，地球证词将连续2周带您走访不同的国度，从不同的角度来认识佛教文化。19世纪，佛教传入美国，美国文化的多元性与包容性，是否为这个发展了2000年的亚洲宗教注入另一番新的风貌？佛教在美国努力地探索新的解读方式，除了自我修行，似乎也找到了另一种更为入世的修行方法，进一步展开对这个世界的爱与行动。一起来欣赏今天的这部纪录片《佛教在美国》第1集。
Buddhism was first officially introduced to America at the Parliament of the World's Religions held in Chicago in 1893. Now, 100 years since then, Buddhism is flourishing in this land. It is a new kind of culture. It is a sincere and dynamic catalyst for change. This is the Pacific Zen Institute in California. The members of this institute who train in meditation have gathered at a forest. They have borrowed this place for a 7-day retreat. All of the participants are lay people.
Okay. Great, well, thank you.
Sure.
It will be a 7-day-long journey of the heart. This is the person who will be leading that journey. He is John Tarrant, the founder of the Pacific Zen Institute. He is one of the most famous teachers of Buddhism in America, and he is also a layman. Unlike in Asia, where people become monks in order to practice Buddhism, most Americans practice Buddhism at home.
No fear!
They practice Buddhism in their daily lives, and they transform their lives through spiritual training.
No hate!
There are some people who just really, it's their life. They have some inner experience that says, I do this. This is what I do. This is what I care about most. And this is the great focus of my life. Buddhism in America is not so interested in what it looks like outside, but more the inner personal experience. And so people can be in a supermarket and nobody knows they're a Buddhist sort of thing. They could be working in a bank, or they could be working in a law firm or something like that.
Here, lay people are interested in practicing, but they don't just want to make prayers and offerings. They want to do meditation. They want to learn to transform their heart, so that the practices of the monastery are being integrated into the lives of lay people. Westerners do not identify as monastics because they don't take monks' vows. But they're very much interested in the deepest practices and understandings of Buddhism, how to train in wisdom, how to understand emptiness, how to train in mindfulness, how to live and embody a life of compassion and the paramitas, or the perfections of the Buddha.
Some of the people who've stuck with this for 20, 25, and 30 years, they really have come to know a lot of peace and a lot of joy, and it has enriched their life. And the community is based on that, and so that's been very helpful for new people who see that. And also the other message is that the challenge is it possible to go deeply without being a monk or a nun? They care about the quality of their life, and they care about their families, they care about their jobs, but they want to find a new way of relating to it so that they don't suffer so much.
Training is a way to meet with one's true self. They are offering a wide range of programs, such as weekly training and teaching sessions and conversations with the teacher here at the Pacific Zen Institute. This is the same for the roughly 1,000 Buddhism centers and temples all over America. Session retreats are also constantly held. There are overnight retreats as well as 3-month-long retreats.
Retreats are a time when people can put aside whatever they do in their daily lives and come and have silence and have meditation and work with koans. And we think of it as time when you can experience life without the usual delusions and chaos. And it's also something when you sit, when you meditate because, you know, it does calm you and make your life freer and more vivid, but there's this other thing that fundamentally makes life kinder, and so you sit not just for yourself but for other people who can't sit, and so there's a sort of bodhisattva path there.
We have many people from all over the world who do our intensive practice periods. Some are, you know, rather famous, like Jane Fonda. Some are completely impoverished, who come from, you know, third world countries. Some people are great scholars who come here, or researchers like Dr. Alfred Kazniak, who's a neuroscientist. Diversity is very important to me, but when we all get together in the Zendo, and we're doing, as my first teacher, De Sansanim Sung Song, he said, together action. We're really on one track together. There's a kind of mutual entrainment that happens where the self begins to drop away, and that's very powerful. And in that experience, we begin to actualize the fundamental insight related to non-duality.
One of the things I'm very much aware of is how much we're all in a conversation about how to make this great ancient tradition alive here. And we're experimenting and discovering every day, you know, new ways to do that. And I'm just somebody with nothing to do. So whether I'm doing something or not.
The relationship between teacher and student is cooperative and equal. They are companions who are on a spiritual journey together.
The monk said, I went to my teacher with nothing, and I returned with nothing. And the companion said, well, then why did you bother to go? And he said, well, how would I have known that I went with nothing? There are many ways of pointing at the student-teacher relationship, but that is very fundamental to the student-teacher relationship as far. It describes it better than anything I've heard. The student-teacher relationship is not it's not a medical model or the psychotherapeutic model or anything. It is based on a journey to undiscovered country that someone is making, and the guide just says, come on, let's do this together, if you wish. We're fundamentally equals. We both have the Buddha nature, and we both have our attachments and our delusions.
An Asian teacher comes here and is teaching the way, or giving the description of the relationship the way it was in Asia. People here misunderstand it, and we start to think, oh, I stop thinking, I listen to what the teacher says, and I just do that, and that's it. And that's not it, you know. The Buddha really emphasized we need to be intelligent, we need to be thoughtful, we need to think about things, we need to follow ethical conduct, you know. And if a teacher teaches you to do something that is not ethical, you have every right and every need to say no, you know. And so I think the relationship is about developing wisdom, not about becoming a groupie, and not about having your spiritual teacher be mommy or daddy.
When absorbing Asian Buddhism, Americans incorporated Western values. They valued their families and their lives, and their Buddhism became centered around the secular. They put an importance on experience, and laymen participated willingly in training. They took an alternative spiritual path to the one taken by their Asian counterparts. Buddhism has become a way of life for countless Americans. The sudden rise of Buddhism is deeply related to its merger with psychology. This is the Spirit Rock Meditation Center, which is located in Woodacre, California. This is a meditation center for lay people, and they mainly practice Vipassana meditation of Southern Buddhism. This is Jack Cornfield, the center's founder. He is called one of America's greatest spiritual leaders. He trained as a monk in Korea, Thailand, and India, before returning to the U.S. in the mid-70s and acquiring a doctorate's degree in clinical psychology and combining the consultation methods of psychologists with Vipassana Buddhism. Since then, countless scholars have worked to merge Buddhism with psychology. Studies have shown that Buddhist meditation helps relieve the symptoms of stress, depression, and attention deficit disorder.
I'm so glad I went.
Sylvia Borstein, who is leading the Wednesday morning class here, is also a psychologist.
We have 2 of the 10 paramitas. We have equanimity and patience. So what else do you notice is different about you, Barbara?
A reawakening or a deeper connection to wonder. I've actually started a practice each morning of, instead of like, oh, I have to do this today, or this needs to happen, to say, I wonder what will happen today. But not in a totally blonde way. Just with being open to, being conscious that I have choices on how I approach from the first moment that I'm awake.
Except I'm thinking about morality as the second paramita, and I'm thinking the thought in one's mind in the morning, what can I do today for the benefit of all beings, is a way to reframe the morality, so it's not don't do this and don't do that, but what could I possibly do that would make this planet a better place to be? Because I wanted to start with re-examining some of the things that we say all the time about practice and about Buddhism, and I also wanted to start systematically with reviewing through the lens of Sila Samadhi Panya, of the 3 aspects of the path to awakening. Very, very, very. And I was a psychologist before I actually began my practice in with Buddhist meditation, and people often ask me, what do you do differently with your clients now people come? And my sense, this brings it really back to psychotherapeutic meaning, when I have not pushed somebody away in my mind, because I've had a judgment about them, they should have done it this way or this way or this way. But actually, I have compassion in my mind. They couldn't have done it another way. They will feel the compassion that I have. It's just palpable in the world.
one of the interesting connections that's happening as Dharma grows in America is that between Eastern and Western psychology. Buddhism in many ways is a psychology of mind. The Dalai Lama calls it a science of mind. We understand how the mind works, how the mind creates suffering, and how the mind and heart can be free of suffering. My work over the years has been to bring Buddhist teaching and psychology to many, many Western therapists and psychologists. I've gone to conferences and taught thousands and thousands of American psychologists and psychiatrists the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the teachings of impermanence and selflessness. They, on the other hand, have taught to Buddhist practitioners here ways of being aware of their emotions that are not so carefully spelled out in Buddhist training, ways of working with the suffering of their family history to release them. And those can be actually done as mindfulness practices. So it's not separate from Buddhism, but there is some way in which they are supporting one another.
When people are coming with strong emotional or psychological issues, and they're really caught in them in some way, sometimes it's not enough to simply say, well, just be mindful of it. And so there's a little bit of an investigation on a psychological level. Well, what's this about? How is it being fed? What is its root? But there's also a point where people have enough balance in their own minds where they really can look at it meditatively and are not so lost in their own particular story, but at this point really seeing the nature of the emotion itself. So it would be like, it's not what I'm angry about, it's about what is the nature of anger. And so then we're getting more into the meditative understanding.
It comes up in your mind, those reflections that we just...
There has been an increased interest in Buddhism with increasing awareness that Buddhism helps heal wounds of the heart. In 2002, 15 million Americans practiced Buddhist meditation as a form of therapy.
It's hard not to.
Thanks to this, Americans have become more interested in the fundamental beliefs of Buddhism.
Not in her ability to handle at that time.
Actually, I think that's a very good place to end up on.
Well, here's a metaphor. It's like you're in prison. That's the Four Noble Truths. We're in prison. We're suffering. Not only that, the prison's burning. Psychology goes to a room that's not burning, or you're in prison, and its idea is to make the prison nicer. It brings in a nice couch. It paints the walls a different color. It shows you a movie of outside. And the Dharma just is a demolition project. It takes down the prison walls. And so your idea of psychology is often adjusting your idea of having a self, but if you really, the deeper you go into the Dharma, the self disappears. And your connection with the universe, like subject-object connection with the universe changes, so you feel much more part of things. And I think that's part of the sense of kindness. You're not fundamentally trying to hold yourself together against the world. You're part of the world, and you appreciate the world and want to be helpful to the world.
Personally, I believe that Buddhism takes psychology to a greater level. One of the core pieces maybe is that there's this psychology understanding that I believe is Freudian, old understanding, where the thought was that good psychotherapy could transform neurotic suffering into ordinary suffering. And then that was the goal. That was sort of like all we can do as therapists. Just help people suffer in an ordinary way. Where, of course, Buddhism is taking that beyond ordinary suffering to non-suffering, to liberation, to the possibility of actual no suffering at all, enlightenment.
While psychology focuses on the suffering of the self, Buddhism helps one become aware of the suffering of others. Here, people talk about someone who is suffering 5 minutes before the meditation ends.
will be going on dialysis and waiting for a new kidney. May her healing be easy and speedy.
2 wonderful teenage girls who lost their mom to cancer last week.
My daughter Sarah Becca, son David. She's a single mom, and pray for them and all the challenges that they face together.
By meditating on the suffering of others, people here experience compassion. There are many women leaders in American Buddhism, like Sylvia Boorstein, who is leading this meditation.
大爱电视，全家人的频道。
国民汉字须知，带您学汉字，学好字。本周我们又要到哪里去学习什么字呢？
星星这个字呢，他们不是晚上才出现才看得到吗？那为什么上面有一个日字？
晚上才出现的星星，为什么上面会有一个日字？你知道吗？
你觉得这3个字虽然意思差不多是一样的，但是他们还是有不同的地方。
就是你问我的意思，他们的相异之处在哪里，对不对？
宅，
究竟屋、底、宅这3个字有什么不同呢？
你有没有觉得“秀”这个字很难想？为什么是口字边？
对啊，不知道为什么
嗅觉明明是用鼻子，为什么是口字边的呢？
那你知不知道，嗅觉就是我们去闻的这个动作，这个闻的台语怎么念？
想知道更多的汉字知识吗？敬请锁定每周3晚间8点《国民汉字须知》。
台湾地这个情形，农药残余的影响严重。
我现在其实我需要担心的是，我的技术如何让它传承下去，还要再思考如何让新的客人能够愿意接受做出来这个茶的品质。
环球仓储与大爱电视一同传递人文德香。
其实光是看这面镜子，我们就可以开始教他说，这是眼睛啊、鼻子啊，然后教他说，这个是宝宝你自己，旁边的这个人是妈妈呀，他会觉得说，原来书本并不可怕。这边就是要祝贺我说，今天是母亲节，要快乐哦，就觉得说。当妈妈真的是很幸福的。
推动亲子共读的小儿科医生吴淑娟的故事，与您真情分享。
人缘是缘，意指每一件事情都做得人人皆大欢喜。
Maitripa College is a school of Tibetan Buddhism. The Dalai Lama first visited the U.S. in 1972. Afterwards, Tibetan Buddhism received widespread popularity and support. Today, the Venerable Tubten Chodron is visiting for a lecture.
I think you all probably know that
she is an American nun and student of the Dalai Lama, as well as one of the 3 most famous nuns in the world.
Several different Dharma centers, and she was in Singapore for several years.
She teaches Buddhism all over the world in a down-to-earth and practical manner.
And when we say we want to be happy, what is it really that we're looking for. Do you have some advice?
Unlike in Tibet, which has no nuns, American Buddhists recognize women as teachers.
Yeah, you have some advice for your...
Thanks to American values of equality, the women are given an equal status and role as the men here.
Oh, they did. Okay. Just from outside, because inside... I was among the first generation of Westerners to ordain in the Tibetan tradition, and the Tibetans are a refugee population, at least our teachers are, because it's so difficult to go into Tibet and study there. And so there were not facilities for us in Asia to stay in, and there's not facilities in the West, and our Tibetan teachers are very concerned about reestablishing their own Tibetan monasteries in exile. So we Western monastics were kind of left to fend for ourselves. And so there weren't monasteries for us to stay in. There wasn't financial support. It was really quite difficult.
But the Venerable Thubten Chodron overcame these difficulties and founded an abbey in 2003. This is the Sravasti Abbey, located in a suburb of Washington State. This is a place where both monks and nuns can train in Buddhism. It is open not only to monastics, but to lay people as well. Lay people who want to experience the life of a monastic or who want to practice Szechen come here.
Having the opportunity to live a renunciate life. Many people commented to me that just knowing that the Abbey was here inspired them, knowing that there was a group of individuals who were trying to live a simple lifestyle, who were trying to cultivate love and compassion, that they found it tremendously inspiring for their own life when they were busy in the city. So we're all related, we're all interconnected, really seeing this and feeling this.
In America, about half the leaders and monastics of Buddhism are women. This is why American Buddhism is different from traditionally male-centered Asian Buddhism.
When Buddhism comes to America, it starts to take on already some American qualities. It's becoming more feminine. There are more female teachers than there are in most Buddhist countries. And the quality of the feminine, which is relational and compassionate more than heroic struggle, is the quality that you see in much of Buddhism in America.
This is something I know there's quite a bit of resistance in Asia. I've experienced it myself as I've traveled in Japan and China, Tibet, and Southeast Asia. But I'm a brave woman. It hasn't bothered me so much. And I think that the empowerment of women in Western culture, of Buddhist teachers, many women who are abbesses or abbots of monasteries, many women who are fully authorized to teach in the highest ranks of all of Buddhism, who are coming from the West, it's having a deep impact on Asia.
The 1960s Beat movement played a pivotal role in this empowerment of women. It was a confusing time for Americans with the Vietnam War, the assassination of President Kennedy, and racial tensions. The Beat movement became interested in Buddhism as an alternative to the Western culture that caused such chaos and destruction. This merger of the Beat movement, which also contained the feminist movement, with Buddhism, helped foster an atmosphere of sexual equality.
Well, I think diversity and inclusiveness are very, very important, especially for Buddhism to exist in places like America, where it's such a diverse culture. And So I think one thing that's very important is gender equality. So this is a big transition step from the way Buddhism is often practiced in Asia. But the Buddha wanted everybody to get enlightened, and he wanted everybody. So for everybody to get enlightened, everybody needs equal practice opportunities. So I think we need to really open things up in terms of gender inclusiveness.
All beings are precious. The Buddhist belief that all people are equal also means that men and women are equal. The equality that can be found in American Buddhism is even influencing the Buddhism of Asia. This is Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the southwestern United States. There is a unique temple here. It is the Upaya Zen Center. It is a place for lay people to lead communal lives while practicing Buddhism. This kind of lifestyle, which is neither monastic nor secular, is a distinctive feature of American Buddhism.
We're sure seeing that.
This is Joan Halifax, the founder of the center.
Situation.
She is a well-known Buddhist lay teacher and activist.
It's a deeply problematic.
In 1980, she also founded the Zen Peacemaker Order, along with Bernie Glassman, a pioneer of socially engaged Buddhism.
So we be a refuge for those men, some other dimensions in here. And that reminds me of the three tenets of the Peacemaker Order, Zen Peacemaker Order of Roshi Bernie Glassman. The first tenet is of not knowing. How do you sit there with a really open mind, really as a beginner?
Right.
Not knowing is most intimate, said a great Zen teacher. And then the second tenet is bearing witness. How do you presence the joy and suffering of the world without the conceptual mind mediating your experience? How can you be present in an unfiltered way to things just as they are? And the third tenet is loving action. Out of not knowing and bearing witness, the response of kindness to the world and of compassion. How do we respond? So those tenets guide me in my work as a socially engaged Buddhist, and also have guided me for many years in my practice of Zazen.
Leaders in socially engaged Buddhism, the people here are making their voices heard on social issues. They are also active volunteers. Since 1970, they have been running a hospice program here. They are helping people who are facing death to accept it in peace.
At some point today, you'll check in with Shinzan on Doan training.
I have seen that we keep the lights on pretty often, and please put the lights on. Out.
Inexhaustible, I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless, I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Thank you.
There's also a program for convicts. Through consultations and meditation, convicts are made to see themselves and the world in a different light.
So I was like, I had them.
But we have individual report backs from inmates who've been through the program who say, this has in fact changed my life. And there are now films coming out, films being made in United States prisons that show the benefit of meditation retreats, where inmates are interviewed after a retreat, and they say, you know, I am a different person from this. So what else can you go on? We don't have, we have some recidivism reduction at Grants, New Mexico, what we call Western State Prison. There is a meditation pod that has been functioning, and they have shown a drop in their recidivism rate by 50%.
This mental training is a base, but at the same time, our engagement with the world, our political engagement, our engagement in education, our engagement in the medical system, our engagement in deep social questions like, for example, war. Wars are being waged all over the planet. We practice nonviolence, non-harming to the best of our ability. We're deeply opposed to war. And we can't just have those feelings. In my particular center, we have to act upon those feelings. We have to engage politically. You know, we're very active in getting out the vote in the current election. We're very verbal in our Dharma talks about the terrible social and global illness that arises from the presence of harming, of war, of violence, particularly violence against women and children.
This social engagement is based on strict practice. There's a room in one corner of the center where teachers and students can converse one-on-one. It's time to check the progress of a student.
The biggest obstacle to your practice?
The biggest obstacle for me right now is to get lost in my overwhelming feelings.
Sadness is caused by the suffering of the world, and this sadness brings about mercy. The Buddhists of America have awakened to this mercy and are actively engaged in society. They participate in various volunteer programs and work towards eliminating war and racial prejudice.
After a big wave came, and
Buddha was an engaged revolutionary. He was a reformer of not only spiritual views in ancient India, but also of classist, sexist oppression that was happening. So I take the Buddha as my teacher and as my role model, and I believe that it's part of a Buddhist practice to be engaged. Now, I don't think we need to wait until we've been enlightened, as he did, in order to do so. For me, it feels very much a part of the path to enlightenment to try to create a positive change, to practice generosity and giving, to practice some level of serving and engaging. So one of the first ways that I started to be of service was going back into jails to teach people to meditate, to be of service in that way. I also worked for many years with people on the streets doing outreach, working with homeless people, working with HIV and AIDS education. So from the beginning it's been very important to be engaged, to be of service.
The ethic of democracy or human rights, which has become fundamentally a part of Western thinking. We assume that. And I think that that actually inspires a lot of people to bring that into their practice of Dharma. I like to think also that Dharma practice itself inspires that a rededicated fervor for social justice action through really increased realization of the suffering in the world, which I think has to inspire compassion.
The self and the world are not separate. That is why one changes oneself and the world through practice. In America, Buddhists are putting this truth into practice through social engagement. Although Joan Halifax is a Zen Buddhist herself, she is open to various branches of Buddhism, and her students practice in a wide variety of ways. This kind of openness is also a distinctive feature of Buddhism here.
大爱电视，全家人的频道。
2015年5月，立法院3读通过长期照顾服务法，近数百万家庭受惠。究竟什么是长照法？为何各方争议不断？
大概有超过12%的65岁以上的老年人口，年轻人要工作，家里子女少，那谁要照顾他们？
长辈发烧冒冷汗，肚子痛到受不了，身体到底出了什么问题？
胆结石发作有2种，一种就是他上腹痛，然后痛到他会冒冷汗；那另外一种就是他造成发炎了，那这个时候他就会合并发烧。
音乐怪老子王秋珍，废弃物打造出怪乐器，悠扬音符连结父子心灵。
叫小孩子，他看比现在的小孩差不多可能那3岁小孩子一样啊。
聚集各领域的思想家与行动者。
我是庄心柔，
我是林东奎。
一般来说，最讨厌蛇的是女生，可是偏偏她的口水可以让你变美。目前一些重大死亡原因的治疗的解方，会是从蛇毒身上来。你可以不喜欢她，可是她活着对我们才有改变我们问题或改善我们困境的一些机会。
传播知识的殿堂，人文讲堂。
缓步仍需足丈扶，清楚描写出杜甫行动不方便的景象。
避症是中医一个特有的名词，它并不能跟现代医学上任何一个疾病直接划等号。避症比较像是一个集合性的名词，所以包含现代的风湿病啊、自体免疫性的疾病啊、关节病，这都属于避症的范畴。
让我们一起看中医，守护您的健康。
待人处事，皆出自内心的真诚，方能圆满人格。
This is the Blue Heron Zen community located in Seattle, Washington. The leaders of various branches of Buddhism have gathered together here. They are all part of the Northwest Dharma Association. They gather together like this once a year. This helps foster an atmosphere of friendship and exchange between the various traditions and branches of Buddhism.
So I can stay over. There's a place for me to stay. Okay.
In this way, the Buddhism of various countries can be found in America. There's Buddhism from Korea, Japan, Tibet, and Sri Lanka here. This is the first time in history that something like this has happened. American pluralism has allowed these various traditions to recognize and accept one another.
Just as the earth and other elements, so long as all have not attained to peace.
This diversity makes American Buddhism all the richer. Some centers teach the practices of various branches, while some teachers study the various traditions before teaching a combination of what they have learned. The various Buddhist traditions of Asia have come together in America.
Americans and Western practitioners are now bringing together these different elements. At first, for the Asian teachers and for Western teachers in very strict traditions, this was a problem, and they didn't know how to deal with it. But little by little now, as you could see from the meeting today, people are having to learn how to work together. So the Theravadan teachers are now working with the Tibetan teachers in the West. The Korean and Japanese teachers are working with one another. So there's a tremendous new kind of Dharma happening. And I think it's very healthy for the Dharma as a whole.
And I myself have been enriched by cross-training. You know, I've been sitting Zen since 1965, so wonderful. That's very useful. But in the course of these many years, I've had the chance to study with Theravadan teachers and Tibetan teachers. I feel deeply enriched by that. The perspective that I've been enriched by in terms of the Tibetan practice has been a great emphasis on compassion. And on the other side, the perspective that I've been enriched by in the Theravadan practice has been the study of the Pali Canon, the essence teachings of the Buddha. Very useful. But my Zen practice is my root.
I spent many, many years in the Theravada tradition of Vipassana meditation, 20, 30 years, immersed in that. And then at a certain point, a friend who had been studying with Tibetan teachers said, well, why don't you come meet some of these teachers? And I did, and began some of the Tibetan practices. And for some time, there was a real problem in my mind, because even though the practices were not really in conflict, when I understood it's not that, it's just different skillful means, different skillful methods for actually liberating the mind from grasping and clinging, well, then everything became just a useful tool. We could describe it this way. Does it free the mind? We describe it the opposite way. Does it free the mind? Once we've established a depth of understanding in one tradition, and we really have a good, balanced, deep understanding of the teachings from experience, then to study in other traditions with other teachers only enriches it. We begin to see it from other sides and other angles.
Also, new forms of Buddhism are being created. The Against the Stream Buddhist Meditation Society is part of such a current. They have 25 centers nationwide.
Against the Stream is the translation of a Pali term, the old Buddhist language term that translates. The original word is patiso tagami, and it translates as against the stream. And it's recorded just after the Buddha's enlightenment, when he was reflecting on his path and the meditative practice and everything that had brought him to this newfound freedom. And he referred to his experience as having gone against the stream. He said that the path to this freedom was almost, for me, it feels like a form of rebellion, of going against these sort of false promises that you'll be happy if you get enough pleasure or enough stuff. So the renunciation being against the stream, and even just meditating and sitting still and training your mind is so kind of a form of, I guess what I'm wanting to say is that mindfulness, present time awareness, is against the stream. Build community.
Noah Levine calls his society Dharma Punk. He says, like punk culture, one must go against the stream in order to reach the truth.
Brian.
Celeste. Madeline. Sam.
It's relaxing into sitting up and letting your hands rest however is comfortable to you.
Noah Levine is a student of Jack Kornfield, an authority on Vipassana meditation. He also received his qualification as a teacher from him.
Allow your body to breathe in its own natural rhythm. Not necessary to control the breath. Attempting to meet it with mercy and care, rather than resistance and hatred.
Noah Levine is a second-generation Buddhist. And he founded his own society based on his practice and understanding of Buddhism.
The only thing that I would say maybe is a big part of our practice that isn't included in that eightfold path is metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, upekkha, and mudita, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So those are a large part of our training here and practice. Although they're not technically in the Eightfold Path, they're a little bit later teachings from the Buddha. We also do quite a bit of forgiveness meditation practice. So many people, myself included, that practice in this way have a lot of pain of the past and a lot of anger and resentment, sometimes towards ourselves, sometimes towards others, or guilt or shame about how we've been unskillful. And so I tend to teach quite a bit of forgiveness meditation, of encouraging people to actually sit and offer forgiveness and ask for forgiveness as part of a meditation practice.
Someone had insulted me and it hurt my feelings somehow. I could say, oh, I'm cool, I'm fine, I'm totally cool, you know, that didn't hurt, you know, but obviously that's denial. Yeah. Or, you know, how do I tell the difference between that and saying, oh, wow, that really hurt, and I'm going to let that pain go through me and then go on with my life.
Yeah. I guess it's just the difference is honesty. Because even when we're saying, I'm cool, you know, that didn't hurt, we know we are actually hurting. So it's really quite kind of, it's aversion to the pain. It's resistance or suppression or denial of the pain is there. So I guess the answer is the difference between denial is actually just accepting it, it's there, and responding appropriately, which is with some compassion, with some honesty towards it, and saying, this really hurt. You know, I am really offended, and even if it's just my ego is bruised or whatever, but it feels like this. I understand the inevitability of loss.
It is the younger generation that is mainly interested in the society. In order to connect more easily with them, Noah Levine dresses and acts casually.
I would have been making
there are no formalities here.
It doesn't make it hurt. It doesn't take the pain. I don't encourage much bowing or any of that, partially just because that's not an American tradition. It's I understand it and actually quite appreciate that it's a beautiful tradition in Asia. But here in the States, I feel like sometimes people are trying to, rather than be kind, loving people, they're trying to be Asian. They're trying to take on the form of Asian Buddhism, rather than being a Buddha, rather than being an American Buddha. That's our tradition is to shake hands, excuse me, to shake hands or to hug. Although if you saw me in the room with one of my main teachers, Ajahn Amaro, I probably would be bowing some out of deep respect for him and his tradition. But for me and my tradition in the States, bowing isn't really part of it, and sort of reverence of statues or images isn't really part of it. We're much more interested, I'm much more interested in people experiencing Buddha nature or their own possibility of liberation than externalizing it into form. That is built into us.
Buddhism in America is developing into a wide variety of forms.
That thinks that we can somehow create a life that's going to feel
An American Buddhism that's right for American culture is being made.
What he was teaching. So I enjoy each moment I have with it.
I think that we have to remain loyal to the traditional teachings. But in terms of the form and the way a community is organized, or the way the precepts are kept in a certain culture, you know, these more external elements, those are where I feel the adaptation occurs. Okay, so for example, here we do our chanting in English, okay, and we're making up some of our own melodies. In terms of keeping the monastic precepts, while some of them are difficult to keep exactly per the letter, because the situation is so much different here than it was in India 26 centuries ago, then we look at the precepts and what was the reason that the Buddha spoke that precept, what mental state was he trying to get at, and then we apply that to where we are now.
There's a long association between Zen and the arts, you know, and I think it's because art can explain things to people differently from philosophy, the way philosophy can, and I think that's sort of useful, that people will be attracted to that. So we have, you know, music, and so as musicians have come along, we've gradually started doing Western songs, and we've translated the sutras, and had a long ongoing translation project for koans as well as sutras.
2,600 years ago, Buddha appeared with his revolutionary teachings in India. Now, his truths are blossoming anew every time they are spread to a new land. Through practice, Americans are dreaming of an inner revolution and a true change in the world. They are creating a new kind of Buddhism. So what does the future hold in store for American Buddhism?
Now there is one Dharma again, many forms. So it's like a white light that has been split into colors and is now reconverging to the central issues of the Dharma.
Here in the States, I think we're still in the process of finding out what an American container might look like. Now, the container, from my perspective, always has to be the 5 precepts. Has to be an ethical behavior container for awakening.
Some of our American culture needs to settle down, and we need to get rid of this push-button approach. Because it's not a thing of hurry up and get it done. It's a thing of creating the causes over a long period of time.
One of the interesting things that may happen in the future is that as Buddhism finds a new language in modern American culture, it may be interesting to the people of Burma or Japan or Korea or Thailand. And now we find teachers from America being invited a little bit back to those countries for people who are interested in learning about Buddhism from a modern American cultural perspective. So now we have the privilege of together supporting the Dharma around the world.
大爱电视，全家人的频道。
他是瑞芳山城的清贫小子，他是高雄旗山的千金小姐。田家达、德兴、
明春啊，你若真正要跑到的阿玉啊哦，我是感觉讲哦，出煞气啊。
我这个人哦，无什么优点啊，就是不爱哦凊彩好气，我绝对会带着李玉。
长情剧展，幸福来牵手。
你好，有人在吗？啊，谢谢你，我们来搬家具哈，可以吗？
可以。
那个小朋友可以看到说，原来的树是长这样子。哎，大哥，干不起来，干不起来。 们再下去一点，再出去，再下去。其实是那个需要会让这个事情一直走，不是公益，不是公益，是需求啊。
感恩全程智茂与大爱电视一同看见台湾生命力。
什么叫做幸运呢？2014年刘轩出版了《祝你好运》，隔年又推出了《幸运透视眼》2本书，从心理学角度，透过有科学根据的观念，获取幸福人生。
Embody cognition， 科学发现说，其实我们身体也是我们思考的一个部分。你要去运动，你要去让自己的身体呈现一个开放式的一个知觉，而不是整天缩在那边。你让你自己微笑，不要变得太烦躁，变得比较正面的人，全部的效果来滚起来的话，那是不是就会变成一个比较幸运的人生？
如果我们真的相信这本书的话，那我们是不是就是等于相信权威的一种？
挑战我的权威？来，我觉得你本来就应该要挑战。
新出来读书，大家一起来读书。
医疗的使命是救人，用生命走入生命，抢救生命，即是志业精神。
各位观众朋友，大家好，我是何佩玲，欢迎收看《地球证词》。今天播出的纪录片是《佛教在美国》第1集。2600年前，佛教源自于印度，一直以来被视为极具东方色彩的宗教。19世纪中，佛教被正式介绍到美国本土，展开了融合西方文化的佛教发展，并且在社会上发挥它的影响力。今天很高兴邀请到法鼓文理学院校长施为民法师来到现场为我们导读。师父您好。
佩玲好，各位观众好。
看到今天这一集的纪录片佛教在美国，让我们感觉有一种很新奇的感受。尤其我们会觉得说，佛教它是非常属于亚洲文化的，没想到当它传到美国去之后，它自己产生了一种新的样貌。那我们首先就想跟师父聊聊这个佛教是怎么样引进美国的。其实一开始是跟着中国的移民，在1863年的时候正式介绍给美国，可是它真正的发展起来，其实是在1960年代。那这个时间点其实是很耐人寻味哦，是不是可以请师父来帮我们分析一下，为什么会在1960年代的时候造成这个比较大的风潮呢？
确实早期所谓美国佛教一般被称为初期是移民的佛教，就随着华人或者其他亚洲人士移民到美国。那当然他们会把原先的信仰带过去。
是， 像
早期在旧金山，大概60年代有4万多个这个所谓华工，那他们就有建观音庙，那他们叫救世庙。救世观音菩萨救世庙这样子，但是呢，对美国社会并没有造成太大影响。
是，
那60年代跟美国现在越战的这个泥沼里面，还有民权运动开始对于黑人所谓不平等待遇的问题妇女解放的问题
是。
所以开始对西方文化这种二元价值，就是有优位的跟被宰制的或者有所谓共产主义跟这个民主阵营，对，就是2个阵营的对抗。所以这种二元对立，
也造成一种在西方文化的困境。那正好这个时候，禅宗文化开始在讨论这种相对性，善恶的相对性，是人跟人角色的相对性，或者阶级的这种平等性。所以这种观念会让西方人对原有的价值观产生一种另外一种选择。所以我换一个角度来看这个世界，并不是说每一个人一定是那么对立，说一定是我对，或者你输的问题。是，那我是不是可以改变一种想法，或者生活方式，或者信仰方式？那我想这些是他形成的背景啦。所以从移民的佛教，当时也有一些传播性的佛教，像日本，他们净土真宗想要国际化，是，还有创价协会他们想要国际化，但是都没有形成比较大的风潮。是，反而美国人士他们本身自觉，来做禅的练习禅的学习，乃至于改变生活方式，乃至于到今天所谓70年代以后的正念，就是 mindfulness 这个，从医学界到教育界，开始更能够让美国人注意佛教精神文明里面的一个价值。
所以感觉好像任何事情都要因缘具足，它才有让它发展起来的一个空间。尤其像60年代，其实就像师父您谈到的，美国其实他自己碰到很多的困境，他想要寻求解答，所以他就有一批的人是可以说是到这个东方来去求法。那这样子的自己想要去求法得到的这个法，他会更去找跟自己他的问题去做对应的这样子的一个需求。那我们该怎么样去看第一批的这群的这个求法者，他在这个传法上头他扮演的角色跟他发挥的功能呢？
这些有些是接触到日本禅宗，有些是属于南传佛教的内观的系统，那有一些后来像西藏佛教，当然也有中国佛教。是，那这些会让这一群所谓先驱者去思考说，我在美国的社会怎么来推行或者怎么来算是
这种融合，
对，融合。那它的发展很有意思因为它一方面打破亚洲很多有时候比较固定的这些束缚，也不一定，
像比较形式上的一些东西，
包括像南传佛教或者西藏佛教，几乎女性的弘法者地位
都低落，
对低落。那日本也是，当然台湾很特别，台湾比丘尼女性的角色很重要但是他们接触了亚洲大部分的佛教国家，女性的这个扮演的角色并不是那么的活跃，但是在美国就没有这些包袱了所以他们带回去可能特别在美国本身，它又是比较民主、比较开放，比较讲求法治的这个社会可以，所以它的发展性算是特别又是比较精英分子，所以他在传播的形式上，你会发现也都在精英分子这个层次，大学毕业以上大概占1半以上，是，那中高收入的也都占1半以上，所以目前观察到的，美国佛教的发展，有的人被称为叫精英的佛教嘛，但是它同时也还没有发展出稳定的这种所谓出家僧团的这个团体啦，可能有出家，但是并没有数量那么大，那么多所以这也是一个值得我们未来注意的观察的。像这批人，有些可能曾经出家，或者没有出家，或者大部分都用在家者的角色是在推行嘛。
那其实它这种融合的这种多元性，似乎就已经变成美国佛教它的一个特性了。那师父你怎么样看它这样子的一个多元性，会不会去减损了这个佛教真的精神，或者是它反而是更彰显了它的核心价值呢？
对，或许有些人会觉得像影片里面 包括用朋克
对
这个模式哈，
对，或者是用民谣的方式来去唱诵这个佛经。
可能在我们传统的佛教国家会觉得好像很不庄严，但是因为佛教究竟它第一个随着不同的因缘在发展，有它的可能性的，而且所谓佛法的运用，它可能在不同的时间、空间或者形式都有它的被尊重的地方。
是，
因为我想，在一个民主法治的社会，只要不是犯法，没有违反道德，
是，
各种形式反而会让我们去打破一些先入为主的概念。
是，
因为所谓好坏，并不能从外表或者形式或者样态，去判断的嘛。是，所以在佛教里面，一个很有名的例子，就是善财童子53参《华严经》里面，他所拜访的善知识，也就是佛导师，其实各行各业都有，是，包括是妓女的身份，有一些是商人的身份，有一些是小孩子，有些可能是一个魔术师，有些是其他宗教的人士都有，但是都是他的导师，都是他学习的对象。
所以其实师父您这样的解释我们去对应这个美国他们的这个原来面对二元对立的这个样子的一个困扰，似乎佛教的这样的教义对他们来说反而是一种大解放，而且可能是面对于他们传统二元价值最大的叛逆喽。
或许可以这么说了哈。所以我记得那个团体它的名称就叫做 Against the Stream， 就是逆流了，我们简称叫逆流或者反潮流。那当然，佛教其实在印度，当时的兴起也是某一个角度来讲是一个反潮流。因为传统是婆罗门教嘛，
是。
那婆罗门教他们是主张，就是有创造。创造的神，来主宰我们的苦乐，所以他们基本上是以祭祀为主。那另外一个极端是当时反抗婆罗门这样子的一个讲法，就沙门团体。
是。
那他们又会陷入另外一个极端了哈，就是完全否定所有的价值，就善恶价值统统否定了，又太过犹不及，
是，
所以佛教其实提出一个比较中道的，的一个想法，所以美国的发展其实它能够发展的比较好，其实也比较属于中道，不完全都是极端的反潮流，为反潮流而反潮流的，但是它的样式可能会有。
它就会有不同的样貌，
对，
是，尤其他们的修行方式也非常顺应现在的社会需要。那除了就是这种闭关或者是禅修之外，在美国的这个佛教，他们也会去做一些安宁照顾或者是到监狱里头去
社会参与。
对，这种社会参与，那其实就社会参与，如果就一个非常传统的这个佛教，可能以前就是这个寺庙的一些可能就是有一些发放而已，并没有把它整个落实在修行的过程中。那你怎么样去看说美国这个佛教在这方面的这个往社会去拥抱社会这样子的动作呢？
其实就佛教的精神来看，其实这个部分本来也就有了，社会参与社会关怀这个部分其实也就有，只是有时候在发展当中，因为我们想象中的修行比较属于闭关或者打坐啦，
是，
但是这个部分究竟是在让我们有时间去充实我们自己，去建立一个正确的观念、正确的人生观。那你最后还是要落实在关怀我们众生关怀这个社会嘛。
是，
所以我想这两个应该是相辅相成的。
我想这个佛教要能够在生活上对于我们的生活产生注意，它其实才 才是真正的妙法哦，去为我们解决一些困扰。那在美国这个发展，我想它就是更去落实了这个部分，去实现这个部分。那另外它除了跟社区结合之外，它跟科学的这个结合，我觉得也是很有趣的一个观察点。那尤其它跟心理学去结合，那可以用博学的方式在帮助说怎么样去解决一些心理的困境啊，做一些心理咨商等等。那你怎么样去看说跟这个心理学的结合，跟科学的结合，对于这个佛教发展未来的发展的这样子的方向呢？
我想延续刚刚所说的，就是说，在影片里面，有一位学生跟老师说，他现在最大的障碍，就是本来要对众生慈悲，但是反而陷入了悲伤的情绪，出不来了。
是。
那当然，这老师就会告诉他怎么去脱离这样子的一个困境。也就是说，你个人禅修禅定，能够怎么稳住自己，才有可能去帮助别人嘛。
是。
那这两个部分，就是跟我们刚刚所谈的这个所谓像闭关这类的修行跟社会参与的平衡。那其实所谓科学就是正确知识的追求嘛，有系统正确知识的追求。
是。
那其实我们想一想佛陀时代，释迦牟尼有说法的时候，其实是运用当时的科学知识。对，你看他讲五蕴皆空，五蕴嘛，色受想行识，其实是讲身心的组合啊。
也对，
就是当时的科学知识啊。
是我们如果把它转化成现在的科学语言，
对，
完全行得通的。
对，就是身体的部分嘛，色法，然后受想行识就是精神的层面，就是知情意啊，就现在的知情意嘛，我们的认知、我们的情绪、情感、我们的意志力。佛教讲眼耳鼻舌身意，就是当时认识世界的感官呐，就是当时的科学知识嘛。
是。
对，所以一样的，你在今天怎么来说明所谓真理？因为佛法其实就是追求真理嘛。
是，其实这跟科学的精神其实就是一样，
是一样的，是一样的。
对，
所以能够跟科学对话，其实是一个很好的方向。第一个，它能够让现代人理解、了解，而且比较容易去应用。
它有一个现代的语言的诠释。
对。那第二个可以产生一种对话，可以产生新的观念出来。对，因为佛教有的人在影片里面被称为叫心智科学，就是特别注重心智科学。
是，达赖喇嘛甚至是说这是大脑科学。
对，它其实英文叫science of mind，
是，
其实就是心智科学嘛。那这种古老的这种对于心智了解观察的这个经验，其实可以提供今天对心智的认识。
是。
譬如说，我们现在发现很多问题，其实都是在于认知的问题，认知的错误。第二个是情绪调控错误，大概是这两大类的一个烦恼嘛。
其实这都是心理学他们很希望能够去处理的课题。
那这类的课题，佛教它有很长的一个理论基础，跟实践的经验。
是。
对。那假如能够运用来让科学家去进一步了解，可能对心理治疗，对身心的健康，特别是心智的健康、内心的健康有很大的帮助。比如说忧郁症，像英国就发展正念，就是说mindfulness，去调整你的认知。他发觉对治疗抑郁症有很大的帮助。
是，对，所以其实如何去为佛教找到一个科学的这个理论，或者是一种科学的语言是非常重要的。
对，
那尤其是当一般来说，我们都觉得佛教是属于亚洲的，所以它被记录的方式其实都是用亚洲的语言。
是，
当它要去变成在美国去传法的时候，它就必须要透过西方的语言去做诠释。
科学语言是一个普遍的语言。
对，所以科学语言其实它会变成是一个非常非常好的一个媒介。
对。
那可是有一些的这个诠释法的方式其实是很亚洲的。
对。
那当可能要转成英文的时候，甚至没有办法找到对应的语言，那你怎么样看这种 可能因为在这个转化过程中，会不会产生了误解，或者是有一些很重要的精神就遗漏的状况呢？
一般在转译或者翻译的时候，会注意到2个平衡，一个是形式上面的，就是字义上面的；另外是功能性的。我举一个例子，像在佛教，有一位那个大师叫龙树，龙树菩萨，很有名。但是他的英文，他原来的梵文其实是龙，不是龙，是响尾蛇。是眼镜蛇，说是眼镜蛇，因为印度有眼镜蛇的崇拜嘛，眼镜蛇是一个图腾或者是一个吉祥的象征。
是。
所以像印度有一些宗教仪式，都会请那个会玩那个操弄龙蛇的去家里面做这个眼镜蛇的这个仪式，会带来好运啊，带来什么？
可是没有这样子的文化，可能就难理解了。
所以你假如翻译成在中国翻译成眼镜蛇，蛇数就会怪，所以他换成龙。
那就合理了。那个精神上就会未必是懂的。
对，功能上就比较好了解嘛。
是。
对。那中国佛教传到中国刚开始也是一样，没有直接对应的观念的时候，他有时候也会借用道教的观念，借用儒家的观念，
是
来说明一些事情。
就是利用他们的文化去协助理解。
对。那这个过程当然，会有一些不一定恰当的，但是这是一个过程吧。
是，
他们逐渐会找到一些比较更适合的语言，像 mindfulness 的翻译，以前可能会用 awareness， 也不一定。他们用 mindfulness 怎么样？或者会尝试不同的语句。佛经传到中国也是有这样子的过程，
而且常常是在这种辩证的过程，会让那个精神会更加的清晰。那最后想请教师父的问题哦，我想当现在佛教在美国开始有他自己的样貌，那其实他也开始美国又是这么强盛的一个国家，它的这个传播力是非常强的。那你怎么样去想请教，就是说您怎么样去看待？当这个佛教在美国发扬光大之后，对于整个佛教传播的到世界上面的影响力呢？
它现在基本上还是在精英这个层次在传播，大部分都是中高收入的，
是
或者大学毕业以上的人居多了，精英式的佛教。那将来发展，当然第一个，它会不会再走到庶民？这个层级
是，
那这是我们也会去观察的一个方向哦。那另外一个，它会不会形成像其他佛教国家一样的这种僧团组织？强大的呢？这个也是一个有趣的观察。
是，
不过因为美国在全世界有它的影响力，所以他对佛教的这种吸收、融汇，乃至于有可能，原先是我们输入的嘛，从外面输入的，它可能有一天发展出来输出型的，
也是有可能，
对，有可能输出到其他国家有可能，像现在那个正念减压，这样子的一个方法，有一部分都是输出到亚洲这个国家来了，
是，
像。前阵子，像这个创立者卡巴金博士也都到亚洲来，他也来过我们学校，我也跟他请教说，你当初为什么会学这个就所谓亚洲文化的这个禅坐啊？他说他也是偶然的一个机会，正好听到有关于禅宗方面的演讲，
是，
那他本来在他的文化背景是很怕打坐这件事情，因为我说为什么？他说。他们基督教文化的背景，打坐他叫他要先放空。他说，假如放空的时候，魔鬼会进来，所以他们很怕这样子的一个经验的。
是，
结果他逐渐从里面体会到说很多问题其实是根源于自己，
是
解铃人还是要系铃人所以他从这方面去讨论说，怎么把佛教的正念或者禅修运用在医疗，运用在心理学上面所以这也是我从他 的经验，看到它又输出到亚洲来，或者产生一个新的一个对话，也是很有趣的一个观察的可能性。
那今天真的非常感谢师父来跟我们分享啊！我想今天的纪录片让我们从一个不同的观点来去看佛教的发展。我想不管如何，佛教都是帮助我们去追求一个心理的平静。那希望能够借由这个佛法的力量，可以去让我们去消除我们这些烦恼无明。那走到这个跟不同的文化结合，它就会有不同的样貌。我想这样子的观察点，反而可以让我们对于什么是佛学真正的精神，可以有更多的思考，
有更多的观点，更多元的观点。
是，感恩
阿弥陀佛。
也感谢各位观众朋友的收看，希望下次同一时间继续收看《地球证词》，感恩。
接下来，请继续收看《全球视野》。
2,600 years ago, Buddha appeared with his revolutionary teachings in India. Now, his truths are blossoming anew every time they are spread to a new land. Through practice, Americans are dreaming of an inner revolution and a true change in the world. They are creating a new kind of Buddhism. So what does the future hold in store for American Buddhism?
Now there is one Dharma again, many forms. So it's like a white light that has been split into colors and is now reconverging to the central issues of the Dharma.
One of the interesting things that may happen in the future is that as Buddhism finds a new language in modern American culture, it may be interesting to the people of Burma or Japan or Korea or Thailand. And now we find teachers from America being invited a little bit back to those countries for people who are interested in learning about Buddhism from a modern American cultural perspective. So now we have the privilege of together supporting the Dharma around the world.
19世纪，佛教传入美国。美国文化的多元性与包容性，是否为这个发展了2000年的亚洲宗教注入另一番新的风貌？
美国在全世界有它的影响力，所以它对佛教的这种吸收、融汇，乃至于有可能原先是我们输入的嘛，从外面输入的，它可能有一天发展出来输出型的。所以，怎么把佛教的正念或者禅修运用在医疗、运用在心理学上面，产生一个新的一个对话，也是很有趣的一个观察的可能性。
大爱2台地球证词佛教系列，佛教在美国。
集团与大爱电视一同让爱无远弗届。
台 筑结构稳不稳固真的很重要。
固定家具不困难，运用科学原理做好居家防震。
顶楼加盖，打通拆墙，地震来时危险也跟着升级。
善用隔震还有减震的科技，让我们的生活更安全。
请锁定这集《生伟的科学》，
防震的应变科学一起学。
我从那个时候就知道自己和别人不一样。